The average American woman in 1964 visited the salon once a week. Not for color, not for a cut, but for the wash and set that produced the smooth, controlled silhouette of the period. The bouffant, the page boy, the flip, the French twist. None of those styles could be sustained past the third day without intervention. What the salon visit gave her on Friday was a set that needed to last until the following Friday, and everything she did at home in the 6 days between those appointments was directed toward that one goal. The word set, in the technical sense that every 1960s woman understood from practice rather than from any textbook, describes the physical process by which wet or heated hair is placed in a shape, allowed to dry or cool in that shape, and then released in a form that holds the shape, the drying or cooling process locked in. The mechanism that makes a set work is the reformation of the hair's hydrogen bonds, the temporary chemical links between the protein chains in the hair cortex that break when hair is wet and reform in whatever shape the hair occupies when it dries. A woman who understood how her set worked, without knowing a word of the chemistry behind it, could maintain a salon style at home for 6 days with almost no purchased products. Hit that subscribe button. Let us count down the 20 forgotten hair tricks every 1960s American woman used instead of going to the salon. Number 20. She dried her hair in sections on rollers, not with a hairdryer. The proper set began the moment the hair came out of the shampoo bowl, while it was still fully wet, and the hydrogen bonds were fully broken, and the hair was maximally pliable. The hair was divided into clean, uniform sections. Each section was wound with consistent tension onto a roller of the appropriate size for the desired curl diameter, with small rollers for tight curls, large rollers for smooth waves, and medium rollers for the classic rolled ends of the bouffant. The wound roller was secured with a pin. Every section was identical in size and wound with identical tension, because inconsistent tension produced a set that behaved differently in different sections of the head when the rollers came out. The woman who sat under her home hairdryer hood for 45 minutes, or who slept on her rollers, was giving her hydrogen bonds the time they needed to reform completely in the new shape. A set removed before the hair was fully dry would not hold, because the hydrogen bonds had not had time to complete. Number 19. She used flaxseed gel as a setting lotion. Flaxseed gel began with flaxseed simmered in water until the liquid turned thick and slightly gelatinous. The mixture was strained through a cloth and applied to damp hair before rolling. It was the original setting lotion of the 1960s home beauty routine, and it performed the specific function of commercial setting lotions at a fraction of their cost. The gel coated each hair strand with a thin film of polysaccharide that stiffened slightly as it dried, providing resistance to humidity-driven hydrogen bond disruption that would otherwise cause the set to relax and fall through the day. Women who made flaxseed gel regularly reported that it held a set as reliably as commercial lotions and did not produce the stiffness or flaking that some commercial products introduced. A handful of flaxseed simmered for 10 minutes in 2 cups of water produced enough setting gel for several applications. It kept in the refrigerator for a week. Number 18. She applied beer or flat orange juice as a volumizing rinse. Flat beer poured over the hair and worked through from root to end, left for 5 minutes, then rinsed. This was the 1960s woman's volumizing treatment, and the mechanism behind it was genuine rather than folk superstition. The hydrolyzed proteins released from barley and wheat during fermentation temporarily bonded to the surface of the hair shaft, filling micro gaps in the cuticle and creating a slightly thickened surface that added perceptible volume and improved the hold of the subsequent roller set. Flat orange juice, an alternative for women who found the beer smell unpleasant, provided citric acid that closed the cuticle and improved the hair's surface smoothness for the setting process. Both worked. Both cost almost nothing. Both produced a measurable improvement in the set's body and longevity compared to setting on plain water. Number 17. She sectioned hair before shampooing. Before the shampoo went on, the hair was divided into sections with a comb, and the shampoo was applied to each section in sequence with a gentle linear massage rather than a circular scrubbing motion. The 1960s woman who had learned proper shampoo technique from a mother or from a beauty column understood that scrubbing the scalp in circles tangled the hair and raised the cuticle in a way that made the subsequent setting more difficult. A linear massage, moving fingertip pads. Up the scalp from hairline toward the crown in a firm stroke, cleaned the scalp of sebum and product buildup without tangling or roughening the shaft. The difference in the finish set between hair that had been handled correctly during shampoo and hair that had been scrubbed was visible, and was described consistently in 1960s home beauty guides as the difference between hair that set well and hair that resisted. Number 16. She rinsed with the coldest water possible, always. After the conditioning treatment, regardless of what form the conditioner had taken, the final rinse was always cold. Cold water caused the cuticle scales of the hair shaft to contract toward the closed position, creating a smooth, reflective surface that caught light evenly and felt smooth to the touch. It also temporarily reduced the post-wash scalp oil production that warm or hot water elevated. The cold rinse was specified in every 1960s home beauty guide that addressed hair care, and the women who did it consistently reported that their set lasted longer and that their hair looked shinier through the week. The mechanism was real. A smooth closed cuticle is a more stable surface for a set because raised cuticle scales allow humidity to penetrate the hair shaft more readily and disrupt the hydrogen bonds of the set more quickly than a smooth closed cuticle does. Number 15. She used egg yolk before every shampoo. 1 egg yolk, beaten slightly and worked into dry or damp hair from root to end, left for 15 minutes, then washed out with cool water, was the standard conditioning treatment of the 1960s home beauty routine for women who could not afford or did not have access to commercial conditioning products, which in the early years of the decade was a significant portion of the American population. The EGG yolk's lecithin smoothed the cuticle. Its fatty acids penetrated the hair shaft and reduced the protein loss that occurred during shampooing. Its proteins coated the exterior surface and provided the structural support that made the subsequent set take better and hold longer. Cool water for removal was the critical instruction. Warm water began to cook the egg in the hair, producing a result that was difficult to remove and produced an unpleasant smell. The 1960s woman who rinsed with cool water removed the egg cleanly and left behind exactly what she had applied it to deliver. First pattern break. Here is what hydrogen bonds actually are and why they are the mechanism behind everything on this list. The hair shaft is composed primarily of a protein called keratin, arranged in coiled chains that spiral around each other in the cortex, the thick central layer of the shaft. These chains are held in their coiled configuration partly by hydrogen bonds, weak chemical connections between specific atoms in the protein structure that form and break relatively easily compared to the stronger covalent bonds that determine the hair's fundamental chemistry. When the hair is wet, water molecules displace these hydrogen bonds, breaking the connections between the protein chains and leaving the hair in a pliable, formable state. When the hair dries, new hydrogen bonds form between the protein chains in whatever configuration the hair occupies at the moment of drying. If the hair is dried straight, the new hydrogen bonds hold a straight shape. If the hair is dried on a roller, the new hydrogen bonds hold a curved shape. The set holds until the hair is exposed to sufficient moisture again, either from washing or from high humidity, which breaks the hydrogen bonds again and allows the hair to revert toward its natural shape. Every technique on this list that preserved or extended a set was doing so by either supporting the formation of strong hydrogen bonds during the setting process, by protecting the completed set from the moisture that would break those bonds before the week was out, or by creating a surface condition on the hair shaft that resisted humidity penetration. The women who practiced these techniques without knowing any of this chemistry were nevertheless managing hydrogen bond formation and disruption with considerable precision because the results they were getting told them what was working. Number 14. She applied a glycerin and water spray against humidity. A small spray bottle filled with 1 part pure glycerin and 4 parts water, misted lightly over the completed and dried set before going out, was the humidity control technique of the 1960s home beauty routine. Glycerin is a humectant that draws moisture from the air and holds it on the surface to which it is applied. In very high humidity, a glycerin spray on unprotected hair would have made frizz worse. But applied to a properly set hair surface at low concentration, the glycerin on the hair shaft surface attracted and bound a small amount of atmospheric moisture to itself, which was not enough to penetrate the shaft and break the hydrogen bonds of the set, but was enough to prevent the shaft from seeking that moisture from elsewhere. The thin glycerin film acted as a controlled moisture barrier, holding the set intact in the moderate humidity of a typical day, longer than it would have lasted without it. Number 13. She wrapped her hair in a silk scarf before sleep. The completed set was wrapped each night before sleep in a silk or satin scarf tied at the crown, covering every section of the set and preventing contact with the cotton pillowcase beneath. Cotton pillowcases created 3 problems for the preserved set: friction that roughened the cuticle, moisture absorption that drew the limited moisture from the hydrogen bonds and destabilized the set, and mechanical pressure that distorted the roller shapes before they had fully relaxed into the final style. Silk had none of these problems. Its smooth surface produced no significant friction. It did not absorb moisture. It distributed pressure evenly rather than concentrating it. The woman who went to bed in her silk scarf had a set that looked nearly identical the next morning to what it had looked like when she tied the scarf. The woman who slept on cotton did not. Number 12. She used diluted shampoo. A tablespoon of shampoo diluted in 4 tablespoons of warm water and poured over the scalp rather than the shampoo applied directly from the bottle, reduced the concentration of sulfate detergents in contact with the hair shaft and scalp enough to make a measurable difference in the post-shampoo condition of the hair. The concentrated shampoo formulations available in the 1960s were calibrated for cleaning efficiency rather than for hair health, and the women who noticed that their hair felt harsh and dry after shampooing, and who began diluting the shampoo as a result, were correctly diagnosing and addressing the problem. Diluted shampoo cleaned the scalp adequately, stripped significantly less of the scalp's natural oil from the hair shaft, and produced a post-shampoo condition closer to the natural state that the subsequent conditioning and setting process was working to restore. Number 11. She made a chamomile rinse for light hair. Strong. Chamomile tea, brewed from dried flowers and cooled to room temperature, was poured over freshly rinsed hair and left in without washing out. This was the between-appointment color maintenance technique of the 1960s woman with blonde or light brown hair who could not afford to return to the salon for color touch-ups between her regular appointments. The apigenin and other flavonoids in chamomile flowers mildly inhibited melanin production in the hair shaft with consistent weekly use, producing a gradual brightening effect over 3 to 4 months that looked natural because it was. The preparation cost almost nothing. A box of chamomile tea from the grocery store was about 20 cents in 1963, and the weekly rinse kept light hair visibly brighter between color appointments without any of the damage that chemical lightening required. Number 10. She applied olive oil as a pre-wash treatment. Warm olive oil worked through dry hair from root to end, covered with a shower cap or a warm towel, and left for 30 to 60 minutes before shampooing. The oleic acid in olive oil penetrated the hair cortex and reduced the protein loss that occurred during washing by reinforcing the lipid layer that normally protected the cortex from the shampoo's stripping action. This was the treatment that women with damaged hair from permanent waves or from the heat of weekly styling relied on most consistently. The damage they were managing, raised cuticle, protein depletion, and brittleness, was specifically addressed by the penetrating fatty acid application that olive oil provided in a way that the surface coating conditioners of the era could not. Women who applied olive oil before shampooing once a week maintained a hair condition significantly better than women who used only the shampoo and conditioner in sequence. Second pattern break. Here is something about the 1960s hair care landscape that explains why home techniques mattered as much as they did, in a way that the contemporary context makes difficult to fully appreciate. The average American woman of the early 1960s spent between $2 and $3 at the salon for her weekly wash and set. In a household with a weekly grocery budget of $25 to $30, $2 to $3 represented approximately 10% of the food budget spent on hair. This was not incidental spending. It was a significant allocation that required justification in the weekly household accounting. The 6 days between salon appointments during which the set had to last were therefore not merely a convenience preference, they were an economic requirement. Every day that the set extended without requiring a return to the salon or a home restyle was a day that justified the original investment. The techniques on this list were not beauty indulgences. They were the household management strategies of women who had paid for something and intended to make it last. The silk scarf and the cold water rinse and the flaxseed setting gel were the maintenance practices that turned a $2 Friday investment into a full week of presentable hair, in the same way that the Depression-era kitchen techniques turned a cheap ingredient into a week of meals. The economic logic was identical. The medium was different. Number 9. She used castor oil for scalp health. A small amount of castor oil, worked into the scalp with the pads of the fingers and left on for 30 minutes before shampooing, was the scalp treatment that 1960s women with dry scalp conditions, flakiness, or the specific tightness and irritation that chemical permanent wave solutions sometimes produced, used between appointments. Ricinoleic acid. In castor oil had anti-inflammatory properties at the follicle level. It reduced the scalp irritation caused by chemical processing, and it restored the pliability of the scalp skin that dryness and chemical exposure had reduced. Women who used castor oil treatments regularly between permanent wave appointments reported significantly less scalp irritation and less of the dryness that often followed chemical processing. Their hairdressers attributed those improvements to the women's between appointment care, without always knowing specifically what that care involved. Number 8. She used lemon juice for blonde maintenance. Fresh lemon juice, diluted with an equal amount of water, was applied to the hair with a cotton ball before sitting in the sunlight for 20 to 30 minutes, and then rinsed. The citric acid in lemon juice oxidized the melanin in the hair shaft when activated by ultraviolet light, producing a gradual lightening effect that extended the life of a salon color treatment or brightened naturally light hair without chemical processing. The mechanism was gentle enough that weekly use over a full summer produced a progressive brightening that looked like the natural result of sun exposure, which it was in the sense that the lemon juice was amplifying the effect of the ultraviolet light rather than replacing it. Women who used this technique consistently through the warm months maintained a brightness in their hair color that their hairdressers observed and asked about, because the color was genuinely improved rather than simply preserved. Number 7. She conditioned with mayonnaise. Full-fat mayonnaise, the real kind made with egg yolk and oil, was applied generously to dry hair and covered with a shower cap for 30 to 45 minutes. This combined the protein conditioning of the egg yolk, the lipid penetration of the oil, and the mild acid treatment of the vinegar in a single application that performed 3 separate conditioning functions simultaneously. Women who used mayonnaise conditioning before their Saturday set consistently reported better curl retention and more body in the finished style than women who conditioned with commercial products alone, because the combination of treatments that the mayonnaise provided was addressing more of the hair's conditioning needs in a single session. The smell was the only objection, and it disappeared completely when the hair was dry. Number 6. She rinsed with diluted apple cider vinegar. 2 tablespoons of raw apple cider vinegar in a cup of water were poured over freshly washed hair, worked through, and rinsed out. This restored the pH of the hair surface after shampooing, which in the 1960s meant restoring the acidity that alkaline shampoos disrupted. A smooth acidic hair surface sets better, holds a set longer, and resists humidity more effectively than a disrupted alkaline surface, because the closed cuticle that acidity maintains is more impermeable to the moisture that breaks the hydrogen bonds of the set. Women who used the vinegar rinse consistently before setting reported that their sets lasted noticeably longer into the week. And they were correct. They were setting hair with a properly closed cuticle rather than a raised one, and a closed cuticle locked the set in more effectively and let humidity disrupt it more slowly. Number 5. She used the boar bristle brush for distribution only. The boar bristle brush that appeared on every 1960s vanity table was not used to style the hair. It was used for one specific purpose, distributing the scalp's natural oil outward along the dry hair shaft after the set had been completed and the rollers removed. 20 to 30 strokes from scalp to end, working section by section, carried the sebum produced at the scalp root down the shaft toward the ends, conditioning the hair with its own natural lipid. The women who did this consistently maintained the ends of their hair, the oldest and most depleted sections of each strand, in a condition that women who did not brush consistently could not match with any external product, because the natural oil being distributed was specifically compatible with the hair's protein structure in a way that synthetic conditioners were not. Third pattern break. Here is the specific thing that all of these techniques have in common that explains why they worked as a system rather than as a collection of individual tricks. Every technique on this list was either preparing the hair for the set, protecting the set once it was established, or extending the set's life against the humidity and mechanical disruption that would otherwise break it down over the 6 days between salon appointments. They worked as a system because they were addressing the same underlying mechanism, the hydrogen bond formation and disruption cycle, from different angles at different points in the week. The preparation techniques, the egg yolk conditioner, the olive oil treatment, the flaxseed gel, the cold water rinse, the apple cider vinegar were creating the hair surface conditions under which hydrogen bonds formed most efficiently and held most strongly during the drying process. The protection techniques, the silk scarf, the glycerin spray, the careful towel drying, were preventing the moisture penetration that would break those bonds before the set had served its full week. The maintenance techniques, the boar bristle brushing, the diluted shampoo, the scalp treatments, were managing the health of the hair between sets so that each new set started from the best possible condition. The women who practiced all of these techniques in combination were operating a genuinely effective hair care system, built from kitchen ingredients and inexpensive drugstore products. The contemporary woman who spends $45 on a leave-in treatment is attempting to replicate individual components of this system at a significantly higher cost. The system itself, available for under $1 a week of ingredients, remains as effective today as it was when a weekly salon visit was the economic standard that 6 days of home care had to justify. Number 4. She towel dried by wrapping, not by rubbing. The wet hair coming out of the final rinse was wrapped in a dry towel, with the hair gathered into the towel and the towel twisted gently to absorb excess water. It was then left wrapped for 3 to 5 minutes rather than rubbed vigorously against the scalp. The rubbing motion that most people use to towel dry hair creates friction between the towel fibers and the hair shaft. That roughens the cuticle, tangles the shaft, and can produce mechanical breakage at the points where the roughened cuticle catches. Wet hair is in its weakest mechanical state because the hydrogen bonds are broken, and the shaft is pliable and vulnerable. The wrapping method removed excess water by absorption rather than by friction, leaving the cuticle in its smoothest possible state for the setting process that followed. Number 3. She applied a nettle tea rinse for thinning hair. Dried stinging nettle was steeped in boiling water for 20 minutes. The liquid was strained, cooled, poured over the scalp after shampooing, and left in without rinsing. This was a 19th and early 20th century hair growth remedy that persisted in household beauty knowledge through the 1960s in the households that had kept it. Nettle is now known to contain compounds that inhibit the enzyme 5-alpha reductase, which converts testosterone to dihydrotestosterone, the androgen most directly associated with androgenetic hair thinning in both men and women. Research published in phytotherapy journals in the 2000s confirmed that nettle extract demonstrated this inhibitory activity in laboratory conditions. The women who used nettle tea rinses in the 1960s as a treatment for thinning hair were applying a preparation with a genuine biological mechanism for the specific problem they were treating. That practice was carried forward by tradition from the women before them who had observed the same result. Number 2. She preserved the style with the proper night wrap. Between the full roller reset and the simple silk scarf, a 1960s woman had a third option for nights when she wanted to preserve the dressed style without the full reset of the roller set, the pin curl wrap. Individual sections of the already styled hair were wound flat against the head, secured with a bobby pin, and covered with the silk scarf. In the morning, the bobby pins were removed. The sections were released and lightly brushed. The hydrogen bonds remained undisturbed during sleep, held in their set configuration by the flat wrap instead of relaxing against the pillow. That produced a morning style that required only a touch-up rather than complete rebuilding. Women who did this consistently through the week could stretch a single salon set across 7 days rather than 6. And that was the economic calculation the technique was invented to address. Number 1. She understood that her hair had a RHTHM. At the top of this list is not a specific treatment or a specific technique. It is the understanding that the women who maintained the best hair in the 1960s managed it according to a weekly rhythm that every treatment, every product, and every technique supported. Wash day established the hydrogen bond reset, the setting process locked in the new configuration. The daily techniques protected that configuration from disruption. The weekly treatments maintained the health of the hair that next week's set would depend on. Each element had its place in the sequence, and the sequence worked because the women who practiced it understood that hair care was not a collection of independent interventions, but a continuous management process with a specific weekly arc. The hydrogen bonds that the Monday set locked in were the same bonds that the Tuesday glycerin spray was protecting from humidity, the same bonds that the Wednesday night pin curl wrap was preserving while she slept, the same bonds that the Thursday bore bristle brushing was maintaining while distributing her scalp's oil. Everything was working on the same mechanism from different angles toward the same end, making the Friday salon investment last until the following Friday, because that was what the household's economics required and what her own competence could deliver. Try one technique from this list this week. The cold water final rinse. If you want to start with something that costs nothing and takes 30 seconds. The flaxseed gel. If you roller set your hair and want to understand what a proper setting agent does. The silk pillowcase or scarf if you have never slept on one. Then come to the comments and tell me which one you tried and what it did to your second day hair, because the second day is when the hydrogen bond management shows its work most clearly.